right, we've just done a whole bunch of polynomials and algebraic options at this point. Here's your old buddy Trig. You knew he wasn't going to be far away. Let's do this. Trig, don't get worked up about trig. It's this, you work it the same way you do anything else. So look at here, example 9a. I want to find the limit as x approaches 0 of sine squared x over 1 minus cosine of x. All right? Plug it in. Literally, that's it. Plug it in. If it doesn't work, then you do some algebra or some trig manipulation in order to pull this off. Always, always, always plug it in first. So I know the sine of 0 is 0. The cosine of 0 is 1, right? Over here at 0, I have the coordinate point. 0, oh, for crying out loud. 1, 0. So I know cosine is the x value. Sine is the y value. That's your basic trig that you're expected to know, prerequisite coming in. Remember that unit circle. You need to know those basics like what we've already talked about in that 1.3. So go back and review those if you need to. We have an issue. Houston, we have a problem. So now I look at this and say, okay, that's no big deal. What kind of basic trig functions do I know that I can pull this off? Yeah, what kind of identities, I think is a better word, not necessarily just basic trig functions. What are some identities that we know? Think about the ones that go with sine and cosine together. Yeah, you've got your Pythagorean identity, right? Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1. Do you see what's happening here? So I can rewrite sine squared to be in terms of cosine. So if I already have this cosine, then you can rewrite your sine to be in terms of cosine. Good. Okay, so let's try that out. Oops, let me go back to blue. I have the limit as x approaches 0 of 1 minus cosine squared x over 1 minus cosine x. Now, can I go through and can I cancel this right now? No, you better not be doing that. No, you cannot cancel that. Anything touching a plus or minus is off limits. Off limits. You cannot cancel these independently. You have to take this as a whole piece. But is that going to be a problem for us? No. Check that out, right? You can factor that numerator. That's just the difference of squares. So I can take my limit here as x approaches 0 of 1 plus cosine and 1 minus cosine. And there it is. All right? A little bit of trig identities, a little bit of algebra, and then we work this out. All right? Now, we are taking the limit as x approaches 0 of 1 plus cosine x. 1 plus 1 is 2. And there it is. Now, do you remember back when you were in trig, either high school or college or whatever in pre-calculus, and you worked on verifying trig identities? So you took this and made it representative of what was on the other side, and you just manipulated it with your trig identities. That is major. That's a major, big, huge deal. So when I teach pre-calc, I always emphasize that because this is a way to simplify, not the only way. You could have taken this part of it and gone through and said, okay, that's nice. I can take 1 minus cosine x and then multiply by the conjugate of 1 plus cosine x, 1 plus cosine x, and then see if that works out for you. right? So there's other ways to do this is my point. Now, this is the most efficient way to pull this off, but there are other ways to manipulate these in order to come up with that answer. Things to look for. Oh, this is 1 minus cosine. I know with my identity here that I have something that I can cancel that out with, and that's my best course of action. But it's still trig, right? So I just want to make sure that you know there's more than one way to pull that off. We should have room. Maybe I may be trying to squeeze something in here. Let's see. Let's look at number 62. We have the limit as x approaches 0 of cosine x minus 1 over cosine squared x minus 1. What do you see right now? Yes. Can I cancel this right now? No. Well, first of all, before you do anything else, you've got to plug that thing in. I already did it in my head, which was a problem. So I have 1 minus 1 over 1 squared minus 1. We still got our zeros. Okay, so now I know that I need to manipulate this. The limit as x approaches 0, and we're back to what we kind of did before where we can factor. I just don't have to do a Pythag identity. You can just straight up factor this one. Cosine of x plus 1 and the cosine of x minus 1. Right? So my limit as x approaches 0 is 1 over the cosine of x plus 1. And there's your 1/2. When you do limits, I can't express this enough. When you do limits, step 1, plug it in. Because sometimes something looks freaky deaky, but all you had to do was plug it in. You think, oh, I got to factor this or go through this whole process. No, you don't. Plug that in. Plug that in first, then go on to something else. All right, but plug that in first. If you can plug it in, then that's your best course of action. Beyond that, then you can do your algebra or your trig manipulation.